I like to call them players or companies that are manufacturing TENS units now for, the erotic play.
Oh, okay.
And
Now, do you see a big difference in those besides just getting a regular one? Because when I did a
yeah,
search, go ahead.
Here's the thing: the $26 TENS unit or the 151 like you bought, sure, probably the 151 sounds like from what you have is a pretty decent medical based TENS unit, things like that. But it's going to not. After a while, you're going to get bored with it. What's going to happen is that because it really doesn't have a lot of variability to it. And what happens with that is you also want something that through time you can, I guess, build up to.
Okay.
A normal TENS unit will have just different frequencies and different voltages, and you can go through them but your body gets used to it and you keep having to crank and change the controls. Most of your ones designed for play have audio inputs to them, so you could stim to music and stuff like that. And your body likes variability. When the difference between the erotic side and the pain management side, pain management needs to be a constant signal to just dull the nerve. Erotic is the signals are always changed, so the nerve is constantly active.
Oh,
That's
cool.
what the body likes. So the erotic ones have automatic circuitry inside of them that change the voltage and the frequencies automatically for you during the time that it's on, so you don't have to fiddle with the controls so much. You can just focus on the level, see how high it is, and then just work from there. And some of them have preset modes. The Eros Tech has a preset orgasm mode that was specifically created around frequencies that are known to be erotic for people.
Wow.
So they've already taken the guesswork out to figuring out what works the best, plus you can program it with a computer. You can do, these units are starting to get very fun for the Dom because he can do more things with it where he just isn't stuck with 2 or 3 controls and, it's not. You have remote control units, you've got units that give you different types of feedback with displays on them and that all helps because once you start getting into it and finding out that you're liking it, then you have a better chance of, for a starter, I would say if they could find, for most couples, I would say if they could find somebody, if they're active in a community, that find somebody who has one, either borrow theirs or offer them to do a demo for them, a private demo or something like that, so they can try out different units. Because what you're going to find out is that you buy that $150 unit and maybe that unit is not the most ideal unit. You may not like how that unit feels, but then you try a different unit and someone likes that unit versus that. I've got 8 different TENS units. Some of them, some people like, other ones other people like, and it's very hard. You're not going to put down $4,000 or $5,000 to just try to say, well, do I like this unit or do I like that unit? So for introductory for a couple, I would venture to say they could always buy, the $150, $200 unit, try it, if they're not very active out there in the community or they're just, closet gangsters and be able to go start from there. But you got to start somewhere, but you start slow and you kind of just, don't push anything. If it's a day that's you don't like it, your body has to get acclimated to those sensations. As you said with yourself, you just tried it out and start slow. And, I've yet to have somebody have a bad scene with which play who didn't have it done a incorrect way from the past. What I mean by incorrect way is using a device that's not designed for that, like train transformers, hooking up somebody to a stereo, batteries, like I did in the beginning. But that's the biggest concern.
Okay, so don't use anything but an official TENS unit. We can clear that. Let's talk about some of these sites that they can go to. And I was just thinking, David, we need some TENS unit practitioners to actually go. I heard the other day there's people that actually, these sex practitioners that go sit in couples' bedrooms and help them have better sex. So we need some TENS unit practitioners. You could start a whole business, I think.
I've always offered up with my demos that's something I guess I need to add back to my profile. I've taken off in time is that, couples that are looking, I'm not one to necessarily interact with it other than the fact of, just giving them an ability to do it safely and have somebody there who's qualified that knows, hey, this is, and teach them. So everybody's, you go to your doctor and he just doesn't hand you a tendon and say, here, hook it up to your body and use it. He shows you how to use it. A lot of these companies, you buy the stuff online. If you call them, they'll kind of sort of explain it, but there's tons of people out there electrically. The difference is you want someone who's passionate about it enough to take the time to understand it, not just say, hey, I bought a tendon and I hooked it up to XYZ submissive and this is what happened with it. They understand what it's about. Read the manual on the TENS unit. Take the time to go and read things online. If you're very passionate about doing it and that, but you have to realize it's not just like most people can pick up a flogger and know how to use it without a book. It's a very simple toy. A TENS unit is a complicated device. It may look simple. You just put the pads on, turn it on, and done with it. But if you don't get into the depth of understanding it, it's never going to be more than what you've bought.
Well, let me tell you what excited me about mine too is that the fact that it came with 2 sets of pads that you could plug in at the same time, and so me and my partner can lay there and he can have 2 pads, I can have 2 pads, and we can just play with the sensations and what are you feeling? Laugh, share, ow, whatever we need. I just thought it was really cool that we could partake in that together, because that's a possibility too. It's not always a dom sub thing. It's just with couples, straight up. These things come with more than one pad that you can use together, right?
Right.
So
the only safety concern, the one big safety concern that everybody is always asking about is stim above the waist. How chiropractors do it for that. If anybody takes note when they go to their chiropractor, they're using usually, even if you're using 2 pads, you're not going through the chest. Okay. Your heart is basically in the, on your front side, a little bit more to the left. We call it in the medical field the anterior side or the front. But the concern with doing it is that, if you're doing it across the chest, let's say you put a pad on one nipple, pad on the other nipple, you're sending electricity through the chest, and you really don't want to do that because there's nothing sensual about stimulating those muscles. You want
Tell us which ones are sensual, and like I said, I saw just so the listeners know, these pads. Are they all about the same size, David?
No, there's all different size. The standard for a TENS pad size is what's called basically a 1.5 by 1.5 or a 2 by 2, which is 1.5 inches square or 2 inches square. That's the standard square TENS pad, and that's pretty much versatile to anything because it's not too big. You don't want the pads to touch. And you don't want to put them so close that they're just focused on stimulating one group, because you have to realize that the power some of these units can put off could cause somebody to have a muscle contract, and if they're standing, they could fall down. If you put it on their leg and not thinking about that it's over a muscle group, because you're blocking the signals from the brain to that muscle, your leg's gonna go asleep and the person's gonna fall down.
Well, my unit came with I just think it's funny. It came with it showed where all the body parts were, to the meridians in the body and the area,
right.
And then it was all in Chinese. So I could look at the little lines where it's going, but I have no idea what I'm doing. So
right, and see, that's the concern on some. You made it work just by, as I said, you probably went online, took a little bit, and took a look, and hit up. People are. I'm always welcome for people to email me. I'd rather have people ask me a dumb question than not ask a question and then hear about it later on that someone had a bad experience. That's always my concern. It's something, if you're getting into, ask people that are willing to share and who show competency in it, are willing to.
Well,
share.
Well, tell me some of the sites that we'll give your information at the end of the show so people can contact you. That's really awesome.
So the one biggest thing, just back to the one thing with doing anything above the waist, do not put pads across breast. Do something what's called bipolar contact point. If someone's simulating one breast or the other, put 2 pads apiece, one channel. Put both of the pads on the same breast and then put the other channel on the other one. This way there's no current that goes through the chest. The same thing a chiropractor does. Chiropractor most of the time will use both channels, and what they'll do is they'll put 2 sets of pads on the top of your back, 2 sets a little further down. The electricity is just flowing through your back, not going in front to your chest. Don't put pads front to back. And as I said, that's the safest thing to do, because you don't want to put the electricity across chest. There's no quote-unquote therapeutic benefit to it.
So you mean so mine comes with a red and a white, pad.
Right.
And well, the pads are white, but a red and a white plug. So,
Right. That is one channel. Each red and the white represents one path of electricity.
okay.
One isolated channel. And what would happen is you put that red pad on the front and the white one on the back, the electricity flows from the red pad to the white pad.
Okay, so that's what's happening on my body. That's
Right.
nice
And
to
then
know.
on the other side, it's the other set. You have another red and the white. And it goes from red to white on the other side as well.
Okay, so are the two sides totally separate of each other? The white, white, red, red ever communicate? It's just white, red, white, red.
They shouldn't.
Okay.
That's the difference. On some of the lower end unit, they may have what's called a common ground, where the ground of one channel is tied to the other one. That's a safety concern. Those can, at times, can operate differently than the unit. Most of your ones designed for erotic play have isolated channels, so the electricity cannot flow from one set of pads to the other.
Good.
So that's safest for using above the waist. And so can some of the very, very high medical ones. And that if people want to look, when they look for 10 units, just look for, it'll say in the little manual, isolated channels or isolated, something to do with isolation. And that's the buzzword for, or the keyword for saying that, one set of pads is not going to talk to the other set, which is what you want if you're going to do anything above the waist.
Okay,
as I said,
go ahead. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. This is good.
Yeah, and that's, the biggest concern is just watching it. More people have issues with the signal. As it gets higher up, people will, as it would get necessarily painful and stuff like that, you get that endorphin rush. If someone's got, a concern and they're not used to the sensation, they may respond differently, and it's not necessarily saying they're having a medical issue, but they may get excessively sweaty. They may get, have lightheadedness or dizziness just by the fact of they may not be used to it. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but you need to take it slow and make them aware of the fact that it's something new that they've done. I mean, the concern is that the sweatiness, the pads may come loose, fall off, slide around. The sweat tends to dislodge the pads and things like that. If they're not, buy extra pads. Take the time to make sure you have good contact, so you give someone the best experience. So it's just a lot of it's common sense, but people want to jump quickly into it, not take the time to research it all. Back to the units and that. There's I could probably post a list on my page or email you a list. I can read off all the different domain names, but I don't think that there's the 5 main suppliers of the site, and then there's probably, I would say, at least 20 good articles online related to electroplay that are worthwhile for people to read.
Oh, that, if you could, would you be able to email that to me or post
Sure.
it on your, okay.
Sure.
Let's go ahead though and say that a couple of the sites, your favorite erotic sites that sell these. So you said Sex Tech?
Yeah, Sex Tech, which is the Eros Tech unit. It's basically erostech.com, but Sex Tech is the company that actually sells their units. But they have good documentation online. They've got how-tos, they've got testimonials, they've got links to forums. They're pretty much one of the resources for it, I would say, other than people who actually use their equipment like myself.
Okay.
The other one is PES. It's Paradise Electrostimulation.
Oh,
and
okay.
they're out of Las Vegas, and they've been around a long time, and their stuff is really good.
Great.
And they have a lot of documentation with it. You'll get a good manual with both the Eros Tech and the PES unit. You buy it, you'll get about a 50-page in English manual that will basically explain, from start to go what's going to happen with it.
Now, do you think it takes a 50-page manual just to play with these things, though?
Not necessarily, but you have. Here's my concern: the difference where you with a 50-page manual, what you get versus what you've got there with a little diagram and what you can't understand in the other language, is they have more features than a unit you would buy for the $150. You're buying something that potentially, sure, you can just read the first 3 pages that say how to put the battery in, how to hook up the cables, and how to stem. Those would be in the first 3 or 4 pages. Then the rest of the pages will say, well, troubleshooting. What if someone doesn't feel something? Where to get other pads? Where to get...
I just didn't want to scare... I didn't want to scare people like, I have to read this super high-tech manual before I can even play with this.
No,
So,
and you know what? They're not giving it to people that do not have a technical background that I've introduced to it and said, hey, let's go out and get this unit for me and help them with it. The writing's designed around people who don't have a technical background that just want to have it for play, because they want to be able to sell these people to people and have them enjoy it and not say, oh my God, this was too complicated, and return it.
Right,
so
right.
the manuals are written very well. And when I say 50 pages, there's a lot of pictures.